Let's design a clutch to a mechanical eraser. The mechanical eraser functions as you would expect erasing pencil lead. However, it's retractable and can be housed in a nice metal body. The mechanism behind this mechanical eraser is the same as a mechanical pencil, allowing the eraser, this long thin eraser, to be advanced and retracted. This is the clutch that goes inside. Holds the eraser like this, and that clutch compresses and holds the eraser in place. I need to determine how wide these slots should be. I'm cutting it with this slitting saw. So this blade goes down here. I want it to be wide enough that it can compress the eraser all the way to make sure that the eraser doesn't slide back. But I want to make sure that it's also narrow enough that this ring doesn't come off the end. Ideally, I'd like the ring to stop right about here. And that is because when somebody's pushing hard on the paper, it tends to settle back a little bit because the eraser compresses. It's not like pencil lead. Pencil lead doesn't compress, and so this tends to settle a bit. So if these slots are thin enough that this ring stops right about here, but still allows it to compress it enough that the eraser is held well, that's the best case scenario. I measured this outside dimension before I cut the slots, and now I can measure with the eraser in and a certain amount of compression and measure that little lip right there. I can measure how much this diameter is shrunk, and then I can equate that to the width of the slot that it needs to be. Hold on to the eraser so it doesn't fall, because otherwise it... Oh, crap. Okay, so I was accidentally compressing the clutch with the vise. So using this brass tube, I can compress that spring to a desired force, and then I can put it in the vise, hold that in place, and I can put the eraser in. I can put the eraser in and compress it and say, oh, that's almost enough. So this is my value for if I had just about enough compression. I'd get that. And compress it a little bit more. So now the spring is exerting more force. That compresses the clutch more. And that's enough. The eraser doesn't slide. This is if I had a really good strong spring, and I definitely won't have any sliding at this value. Then I can take this out and just compress it as much as I can with my hands and measure that. With a good eraser, this is as much as I would possibly get if somebody was really pushing on the paper with it. I can say even if somebody had a bad eraser that's been used a bunch and, I don't know, they chewed on or something, I can measure that at its maximum compression and say, worst case scenario, this is how much compression I could possibly have. Okay, so here's what we got. 0.236 is what I meant to machine this to. Actually, it measured 0.2350, so exactly 1/1000 shorter than what I was aiming for. So not bad. That's before I cut the slots. I cut the slots in it and I compressed it. I did that test. 0.226 inches is not enough compression. 0.225 was good and it held the eraser. 0.2202 was the max I could get with a new eraser, and 0.206, a lot more compression, was with a really old eraser. Good was about 10 thou of compression. Max was about 15 thou of compression, and bad was 9 thou. So not a whole lot of difference between those. I think I'm going to aim for 15 or 16 thou of compression just to add a little bit of air. I think in reality, this 29 thou of compression is going to be really hard to get. When you're actually pressing on the eraser, when everything's assembled, it's not able to translate that much force into the clutch. So the method I was using was very extreme, but this is still a good number to know. And I might need to come back to this number later if I run into issues with quality. But right now I'm going to shoot for like 15/16 thou of compression. So I've done a little bit of just writing down on paper to try to figure things out. I made an equation for slot width. So using that compression that I measured in the diameter, I can take slot width equals pi times that compression divided by 4. The 4 in that equation just comes from the 4 slots in the clutch. Okay, so I wrote that equation down here. So my slot width for 4 slots equals pi times that compression that I measured, which was 16 thou I'm gonna go for, because 9 is not enough, 10 is good, 15 is definitely good, and that's maximum. So one more gives me 16 thou divided by 4. So that's pi times 0.016 over 4, and that equals 0.0126. So that gives me the width for my blade. I'm going to round this up to 13. So this blade for cutting the slots is going to be 13 thou based on my measurements that I did and based on this equation that hopefully I developed right. It seems about right based on what I cut this to. This is a little bit more than 13. This is about 18, and it can compress further than I want. So I'm going to buy a slitting saw of that size and try it out, and hopefully it works.